On the other side of toxic Christianity, I found myself faced with one question. Now what? This podcast is about that question. We have conversations with folks who are asking themselves the same things. We're picking up the pieces of a fractured and fragmented faith. We're finding treasure in what the church called trash, beauty and solidarity in people and places we were told to fear, reject, and dismiss. I'm Tamice Spencer-Helms, and this is Life After Leaven. Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of Life After Leaven. I'm your host, Tamice Spencer-Helms, and I'm joined by my friend, Carol. Carol is going to introduce you to herself by saying her last name because I don't want to butcher it, and then I'll read the bio for you guys. So go ahead, Carol, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Ndutanganga. It's an honor to be here. Hope you're well.
So glad you're here. Okay, so Carol is a community development practitioner. She has a BTH. How do you say that?
BTH? Yeah, it's like a bachelor's in theology.
Bachelor's in theology and community development from Cornerstone Institute in Cape Town. She has spent the last 12 years walking alongside various communities towards interventions for their empowerment. In July 2017, she founded Msingi Trust, whose aim is to mobilize, inspire, equip, and network Christians and community leaders towards social justice, social activism, and social transformation. Carol is an ardent believer of justice, equality, and empowerment for all, and has special interest in working with faith leaders and grassroots human rights defenders, bridging the gaps, making connections between these two worlds, to create conversation content and connections to help in the fight against injustice within their community context. You can follow her work on Facebook at Msingi Trust, on Instagram at Msingi Trust, or Twitter at Msingi Trust. Listen to Msingi's podcast, Msingi Talks, on all major podcasts and streaming channels. Hello, friend.
Hello.
Well, I'm so glad to have you. So this is the first season. And so what I've been doing in the first season is just introducing people to my beloved community, the people that I happened upon after leaving toxic Christianity. And so it was really important for me in the first season, as we talk about Life After Leaven, to really talk about what that looks like for a number of different people in a number of different places. So the beauty of falling into a global community is that I get perspective and stories from all over. And so I really wanted people to meet you. They probably already know who you are, but for those who are coming to know you through the book, I'm very excited for them to hear all of the flames you're about to drop. So I'm going to ask you what I ask everybody, which is, what does life after Leaven look like? So tell us a little bit about what your faith and walk looked like before you unleavened or removed the toxicity from it, and what it looks like now.
All right. So I think for me, there's never been like a particular moment in time where I was like, okay, I'm done. Mm-hmm. I've always been a questioner, and I will question patterns, I will question things the way they come and all that. Mm-hmm. So one of the very first instances when I'm Kenyan, I'm in Kenya, and so one of the first instances where I came across, especially, I used to work at a church, and that's back to when I was studying. Mm-hmm. And I was at a very, you would say, very white area in Cape Town, and you could see even the way the faith is going. Like, you would see even in the publications of the church material, they had to find a way to put me in that, just for the diversity quota and all of that.
Okay. Yes.
But then I didn't know what the issue was, but I'm like, something going on here that I'm not sure about. And then when I interacted with some exchange students when I joined another college, and then I was like, and we're talking about racism, white apartheid in South Africa at that time. And I kept wondering, I've always wondered why we view white people with a superiority that I've never viewed them with.
Wow.
And anything that white people bring to the table becomes the it factor. And so I've never been impressed by whiteness or with whiteness, ever. It's never been and that comes to my disadvantage, because I remember a particular incident when I started working at a church, and I confronted some white people and told them, please do not, for heaven's sake, put naked children on your newsletters. And it was a whole thing. It became a whole thing where they even wanted to let me know my place, So for me, how I did, so there's a time they called me for a meeting. The missionaries that came to Kenya, they called me for a meeting, and I was like, nope, you're coming to my house. So because they wanted to go and buy me coffee and snacks, and then tell me how I had hurt them. So I was like, nope, you're coming to my house and I'm making you food. Counter that, that power dynamic. You're like, nah, we're not doing this. And so they came. I think I didn't even have couch seats at that time. So it's like, what you're doing is coming to my house, and seeing that whiteness has, when confronted about their white people with whiteness, especially white people who are doing good, quote unquote, when confronted with how their good does not match up, or how when their good is harmful to the people that they're finding, they're always so defensive. And so for me, because it has never been anything of power, I don't look at whiteness or white people as the standard. And so it's never moved me in that case. But I can see it. I experience it in the songs that we sing in churches here in Kenya, in the preaching that happens, where the guys who, especially the apologetics that people believe in here, is, your John Pipers, your Grudem's, your all of those people. I'm like, guys, why are we thinking about those people? And so, but I would say that the people who pointed me and helped me name what whiteness was a group of people whom we did a conference called Beyond Whiteness with here in Kenya. And also the group No White Saviors as well. They are my peeps. So they have given me the terms and the words and the experiences that help me name what it is that I don't roll with, because I don't roll with that. So that would have been my experience. And so I think getting the name, or being able to identify what is whiteness, what is, how it bears fruit, how it shows itself in our interaction, has been as a result of that. But there's many small instances where even someone who was very close to me, who was a white family that hosted me in their home one day, and they told me a few years ago that I stopped being a Christian because I was very vocal. And I'm like, hey, you didn't know me, friend. You really did not know me, because I've been vocal from when we started this work. And so also the thing is, with whiteness, it blinds people from seeing the real you. And so because we are with you singing your songs, and you're just seeing this side of me. And so when you see this full picture of who I am, you're like, you were never with us. No, it's like you just saw a little bit of who I was and thought that, and actually to say that little bit of who I was, if that is all you knew of me, then we were never friends. We were never in community, because I come whole, I come as Nduta, I come full, and I come with my experience of my family experience, my life experience, my Kenyan experience, my woman experience. I come as that, but whiteness, just because we, in one way or another, have to negotiate with whiteness, they just see the parts that we negotiate with, and we never, or maybe we never want to show them who we are, because again, they would steal it.
Oh my goodness. Well, so that's the book in a nutshell. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing that I feel even while you're talking. And I've had some folks on, and we've talked a little bit about how nowadays what I do when I hear or feel light and truth and wisdom, I stop and I let it in, because we're doing this podcast, but really what you've just described totally gives me more insight into my own process, because it's true that, and I write about how, you're disposable to these people. You didn't realize it and they never knew you, right? And I remember in the beginning around Trayvon being like, I've always been Black. You just never asked me about that. Like it never came up, right? And so how a whole experience in Christianity, your ethnic identity could never come up. And so, like, you're talking about the people that confronted you, because I had the same, and I don't know what it is about white Christians, but they love to take you to coffee.
Yeah, let me tell you. Like, if you get coffee from a white person, just know you're in trouble. Like trouble coffee. Like, and I'm sure, like, there's, the insane thing is, I'm sure there's like a whole prayer group that's covering that coffee meeting with prayer.
Yes, of course. It's true.
Yeah.
The idea of like, hey, I'm gonna go have a hard conversation with someone. It's so interesting that it's so interesting that you, in your experience in Kenya and my experience over here, how it is extremely similar. Like, what's interesting though is I've been thinking about how whiteness and the pervasiveness of whiteness had disconnected me from my roots, right? And we've talked about briefly, we've talked about how in all of this, I found out that my people are Kenyan, that my ancestry, which is just so exciting, thinking about. Definitely now I have a person that can show me around when I come, and I think it's going to be powerful. But I'm wondering about whiteness in the way that it affects relationship between those who are African and those whose ancestors were brought over and were enslaved. Can you speak a little bit to how that shows up?
Yeah, and I think one of the things we need, and I keep saying this, and I've spoken to a mutual friend, Naya, about it, is that we in the African continent, our first experience with quote unquote African Americans or with Americans is with white Americans, never with siblings. Yeah. And I believe it's intentional. I believe it's intentional that we have not connected. I believe that there's a lot, especially with Hollywood and the media and the portrayal of the Black American, African American, as a criminal, a gangster, and all of that. Those are the images that come to us.
Yeah.
And then with my Kenyan friends who've gone to the States, who say they can never be friends with African Americans in the States because of these guys don't know how good they have it, So I just think there's a lot of intentional cutting of ties between black people, and all of this is due to like economics, the politics, but definitely racism and whiteness. Because if black people all over the world were to unite, man,
They don't want that.
Man, the power that we hold is
Yeah.
very, very huge. And so for me, to have all the BIPOC people as who are part of Inverse as my kin, as people who I know. And so I keep telling people that I never wanted to go to America, North America, until I realized that it's white America that I don't want to go to. And so now that I know I have siblings like you and the rest of them, I'm like, I'm coming, guys. I'm coming home. I've never, ever, ever wanted to come to the States. But when you realize that it's white America that I don't want to experience, then I'm like, it gives me freedom. It gives me freedom to come and interact and eat your food and be in community and just enjoy it. And also, I've never had like a Black American come and stay with me or live with me or come
Okay.
for missions and all that. Because all the people who come to missions here are white people. But the conversation we had one time is that these are people who come all the way to Africa to have their first interaction with Black people. Yet these Black people next door who they would never, ever, ever interact with. So they bring their nonsense all this way, but can't deal with what's next door.
Oh my gosh. Woo.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh, Carol. Woo. Now y'all see. Well, I'm gonna have Carol pretty much on every season. So like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions just exploded out of my head, and I don't know which one to take.
Yeah.
Wow. I just need to sit with it. And by this time, I think, because I think either you or Allison's gonna be the finale. So by this time, they know that if it hits me, I'm just gonna sit with it, and they'll just have some silence in their podcast. But Jesus, there's something about this that's really touching me on a level because of knowing that in her divine wisdom, I was able to make friends with someone who is from where my people are from.
Yeah.
And in the same way, thinking about how even the land I live on, I was put in community with a person whose land this is. So I'm feeling the profundity of all of that right now, and it kind of is throwing me off. And that's okay, because we're doing this as a conversation. Let me think about this. So Tyree Nichols, let's just go there, since that was kind of the thing. So Tyree Nichols was killed recently by Black officers. And a lot of the conversation around that obviously was, see, there's no such thing as racism, because these were Black cops that killed a Black kid. Like, can you talk a little bit more about, because I think about interactions with some Africans who come over, and it is a very difficult conversation, and it's like, you complain, you don't know how you have it. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what is it about whiteness that people are missing, that they can't even see whiteness at work in the death of this boy, even at the hands of Black people? Does that question make sense?
No, it does. And it speaks to maybe what we call home guardism in Kenya. So what the colonizers, the British, did in Kenya was that they appointed what we call home guards. So Black people who did the affairs of the state. And so these were the perfectly well-trained Black people to be the hands and feet of whiteness. And so home guards still rule our country till now. Yeah, they and like And so when most of the people who come to the States, Kenyans, let me talk about Kenyans, are people who've worked, the initial batches were children of home guards, because they're the ones who had the money. So who knew that the white man is might, the white man is right, white man is the way, the truth, and the life, And so when you come now in contact with someone who tells you, no, that's not true, then who looks like you in terms of skin color, but doesn't look like you in terms of thought, because we are all aspiring to whiteness. We are all aspiring to be white. And so when we are performing whiteness, that's when we hurt our own people, because we don't see it. It doesn't matter, because the spirit is whiteness. It doesn't matter who. And because whiteness is not only white people. Whiteness is a spirit. And I want to thank Curtis Reed, Reverend Curtis Reed, for teaching us about whiteness so much, about like how it expresses itself. It's in what is right, is in quote unquote systems and process. It's in masculinity. It's in linear thought. It's in all of those things where it's things that have to be black and white, never the interplay between black and white, never the gray, never the rainbow, never anything else, So when our siblings come to that country, because what we are aspiring to is a semblance of whiteness, because that's what we've been told, it's seek ye first the kingdom of whiteness. It's never anything else, and so when we come into a space where you come face to face with the fact, because I keep wondering, do you know you can be killed by these people through, the police killings, through all of that, but they would still defend whiteness. And so for me, I think it's the media, it's religion, Christianity especially, as it's exported to us through the CBS and Trinity Broadcasting Network, and what's that show with Pat Robertson?
Which one?
With Pat Robertson, what's that guy?
Oh, that's CBN, Christian Broadcasting. Yeah.
Yes, it's all of that. Yes, the 700 Club. It's all of that has been here for the last 30, 40 years. So whiteness is at work. White Christianity is at work. So when we talk about liberation theology, Black theology, any womanist theology, queer theologies, all of that, we never experience that as what becomes missionaries. What is missionaried is whiteness. It's white Christianity. So that is why we get what we get. That is why we will do better than white people in exploiting Black people in other countries as well.
What is missionary as whiteness? I've one of the classes that I took talked about, it was for the first time I was able to read from, theologians from 1st and 2nd century who were not coming from a Western lens at all. They were indigenous writers. The way that they think about God, the things they're not willing to say, that's something that's very interesting to me, was a lot of the Eastern indigenous folks that were writing about theology and writing about life and time, during the rise of the Jesus way, and them trying to figure out how does that fit in with this state. it's so interesting to me because there were so many things they would not say about God. So, they're trying to, tamp down on theological stances and doctrinal statements. And I think of one person, Ephraim the Syrian, who's like my dude now, but he talked about how any attempts to try and think about the Trinity, because at this point they're arguing about the nature of Jesus. So any attempt to try and think about the Trinity in language we can actually use to grasp it is wrong. And so we refuse not to do it. And what happened to them was they were all excommunicated as heretics because they refused to use the language of like hypostatic union. They refused to use the language of Nicaea and these councils that were taking place in the West. And I think about that now because I think about how much of my own despair in Christianity may have been lessened if I had known that there were other ways to think about and conceptualize God that didn't mean I was going to go to hell or be, punished or, out of the community of faith. So in your mind, when you think about what it looks like to lead a life of unleavened faith, what would you say that looks like for folks?
And I think for me personally, it's the liberation of Black people everywhere. Like it's man, it's dignity. I think I keep coming back to the dignity of the Black person.
Yeah.
Who we didn't identify as Black until we were told we were Black. And and we are only Black in the presence of whiteness. Before that, we are people. So for me, it's the liberation of me as a person. It's the reconstituting of all our pieces that are scattered all over the world into one homogeneous group with all our messes, because we are not perfect people, but with the unity of voice and purpose that liberates all. Yeah. And so when people like Marcus Garvey, when guys like Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Mama Winnie, all of those, when our freedom fighters, the named and the unnamed, all over the world, when they looked out and said, we're better than this, we're better than this dominion. So for me, that's it. So it's living the dream of our fathers, our mothers. Those who looked at whiteness in the eye and said, nah.
Woo! Amen.
Yeah. And they did it before all this English,
Yes. Come on, Carol.
They did it before something like their being knew that this was not it. Like when we just came from the coast and there's a lady called Mekatilili Wamenza who walked so many kilometers, who dreamed, who the seers, the prophets, who told us about the white man coming and that this was going to be so evil. And so our people knew that evil was coming, but also our people fought when evil came. And so all over the world, I just look at what Pan-Africanism,
yes,
continentally and away from the continent would look like. So for me, that's it. That's the dream. That's a vision. It's to get Black joy.
Yeah.
Black joy. Black joy and dignity.
Black joy and dignity.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I think there is so much of Carol, you light me up. I know, I mean, I knew what I was getting into. I don't think the listeners did. But I'm like, oh, I could talk to you for hours. Black joy and dignity, and thinking about when I would have these conversations with my friends about how much pain, I mean, because the brutality against Black bodies, even girls, like little girls who were in school being slammed, body slammed by white male, police officers, all of that stuff. Um, it's so interesting because you're telling these people this principality hates my existence. It actually feeds off of my non-existence. It feeds off of me not having dignity. And so the idea that that is embedded in the way that we worship and embedded in what we believe about the divine, about our creator, that will mess you up. And I just don't think people really understood what they were saying when it was like, yeah, but he at least he tells it like it is. When I'm thinking about Trump and thinking about some of the things that he said and the ways that anti-Blackness showed up in a lot of his words. And the fact that nobody would understand that you don't understand that whiteness only exists at the expense of me. That's how it functions. That's its food. It feeds on anti-Blackness, and so when that became clear to me, something shifted for me. It shifted in the way that I was cute about whiteness. I'm not cute about it anymore. Like, absolutely not. I will not do that. And I think that that was when a lot of my friendships sort of, crumbled, or at least finally crumbled. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm excited to have you back because you have so much insight into so many things. One of the things that's hitting me right now is the reality that whiteness is so pervasive that you live where my people are from, and I can't even pronounce your last name. That to me speaks of colonization, and it speaks of it makes me sad. That's what colonization and whiteness has done. Um, uh, so I'm carrying that with me, and I know we're like kind of coming on the end of our time, so we just got to have you back. But I'm gonna ask you the last three questions that we ask everybody.
Yeah.
This was just amazing. We have to do a part two. So the questions are: what are you bringing from the rubble of what is left? And since there wasn't like a moment for you where you you knew on the front end, I'm not rolling with that. So I guess talk about, yes, right. No, y'all not getting it. So I guess tell us what's worth keeping, if anything. And then is there something that you've been reading or listening to that you want to recommend? And then some words to live by.
So, man, I think for me is if you found God in whiteness, just know God is not only found in whiteness. Because I think there's a lot of people who do not know how to, that if you move away from whiteness, then you lose God. Not true, my kin. God's not only found in whiteness. God's everywhere. God's expansive. To limit God to a white faith is to just do yourself such a great disservice. And so free yourself. God's waiting for you at the other side. With arms wide open, and like, it took you quite a while. Come, my child. Yeah. So yeah, so that's the first one for me. It's God can be found through anything, but that doesn't mean that that's the only way God can be found. And so free yourself. It's for freedom. I love one of the things I love about the faith is that it says it is for freedom that we are saved.
Yes.
So please free yourself.
Yes.
So that was the answer to my first one. What's the second question?
Anything you're reading? What are you binging? Reading, listening, watching?
Right now, we with Msingi, we're doing Msingi study. We're doing Exodus. No, Isaiah, and it's a weekly. We come to read a book together, and so we shift from like the Bible to actual written books and all that. With other, okay, that sounds like a Bible is not an actual written book, but you know what I mean.
I hear you.
So the thing that's sticking to me is that in Isaiah, the thing about justice is learn to do justice. It's that justice is learned. So we need to consistently put ourselves in spaces where we are learning to do justice. That sometimes justice does not happen naturally, or the awakening to justice just does not happen. And so I would learn to do justice and learn to do justice to yourself even, because most of the times we approach ourselves with quite with hardness, but we can also liberate ourselves as well, and that's justice as well. Yeah.
My dear friend, thank you so very much. Can you tell us where we can find you? I know I mentioned that in your bio, but if there's other places.
There's the one thing about a quote. I've got, can I share one?
Yes.
We talk a lot about Nelson Mandela, but the woman, the force of the liberation movement in South Africa was Mama Winnie Mandela.
Winnie.
Winnie is the babe, And so she says, in 1976, she said, if you're to free yourself, you must break the chains of oppression yourselves. Only then can we express our dignity. Only when we have liberated ourselves can we cooperate with other groups. Any acceptance of humiliation, indignity, or insult is acceptance of inferiority. Yeah. We only we are the ones who our ancestors were waiting for. We are the ones who will free and liberate ourselves. Anything other than that is an acceptance of inferiority. And she says something else, that it's only when all Black groups join hands and speak with one voice that we shall have a bargaining force which will decide its own destiny. So I think this conversation about Black unity, unification of all Black people worldwide is it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I am just anytime I get to just sit at your feet, I'm honored. And so thank you for being on the show. Can you tell folks where they can find you, or you want me to just put it in the show notes? Or
you can find me, and before that, I'm like, Tamice, I'm so honored to be in community with you. You radiate so much wisdom, so much love. I am just really, really awed by you and the way you carry yourself, the wisdom you bring into any space, the light that you bring. I think many of us are better and blessed by you just being in communion with us. And my sister, I love you very much.
Thank you so much. Singy Trust. Instagram is Singy Trust, on Twitter, Singy Podcast. And then if folks are interested in the book study, is that something that's open to folks, or?
Yes, it's open. It's open to people, and you can inbox us on Singy pages, Singy Trust Facebook, on Singy Trust Instagram, Twitter, and then you can. Our podcast is called Singy Talks on all the spaces, all the podcasting spaces. Yeah.
Thank you, friend. Have a good day. Love you so much.
Love you.